maybe I just want to maybe start off. So we've seen a lot of different systems, and I suppose a lot of challenges facing growers at the moment. One challenge I've seen with multiple systems is presentation and quality. And maybe we'll start off with Sean here, just because he's next to me. Your system is dropping into Punnet. Do you ever envisage maybe teaming up with another automation company for the placement or the packing stations, or just talk to me through how you're going to manage growers' expectations when it comes to presentation.
Yeah, so we with our box robot, we were dropping from the trimming station. Our box robot, we were dropping from the trimming station into the boxes. And depending on the size of the box, certainly we saw this in Australia, it was a deeper box that we were working with, that drop height would do damage as the mushroom fell down and hit the top of the next mushroom. You get kind of fingernail marks in them. So their punnet packing robot, we now have a little mini arm that comes in, picks up the mushroom. At that point in time, the mushroom's been fully it's been quality sorted, so it understands what the quality is of that mushroom. And then there's 3 or 4 punnets it can place it into based on based on the quality assessment of that mushroom. So it'll place it into the mushroom. That allows us to reduce any impact speed and have more of the top layer placed cap up.
Okay. Rick, do you want to just maybe, you've got 2 solutions, I suppose, or 3 around this area. So maybe you want to maybe explain.
Yeah, with the semi-automatic packing station, we tip out the mushrooms. And we can handle more than 120 mushrooms a minute. We tip them out into the punnets. And yeah, for the presentation and for the quality, yeah, we have better solutions. And that is for our third solution, the robot packing station. We put the mushrooms at the end of the belt and we fill the punnets up to 60% using rubber strings. And we place with a robot the last quality mushrooms with the right size and with the right weight on top for the presentation and for the quality.
Okay. Jan Amel, you have your robotic solution that's placing it on it. I suppose you started off with focus on quality and work backwards.
Yeah, that's quite good explained. Yeah. So yeah, it was always the first step. I think in my last presentation I showed the development also back in 2018. So after the tilting shells and the blue belt, it was immediately to have the machine developed that puzzles them into the punnet. We decided then to start from the bottom of the punnet to put the mushrooms in it, because it's quite more efficient to have the puzzle started as the robot wants it to start. But yeah, it was presentation. We knew that mushroom harvesters or mushroom growers are very critical about quality and presentation. So we do, if you want to do any automation in the industry, the presentation has to be minimum the same as with traditional labor.
Okay, Stefan?
Presentation quality, name of the game. You need to be able to handle it. You need to be able to handle it effectively, quickly, cost effectively as well. Our approach is to essentially use multiple suction cups, multiple arms as well, even where you can pick up 4 mushrooms at a time, similar to how a human picks up multiple mushrooms with your hand, and then you can place down into the box the mushrooms either 4 at a time, 3, 2, 1, depending on what the vision system is instructing it to do. Therefore, you build up the box from the ground up, and while you're also doing that, your placement of the mushrooms, size consistency is also important too. You want to make sure your size is consistent. You want to make sure your very next mushroom that you're putting in is the right weight to minimize giveaway. And you don't want to put a poor mushroom at the top of your basket, that's for sure. And you also want to support many different types of packaging as well, because some farms have 30 different plus filling recipes, and you need to be able to support that as well. And I think a combination of vision and mushroom manipulation through robotic systems is a very good way to solve that.
quality is basically looks, as far as I'm concerned, with the mushroom. How it looks determines what people that buy the mushroom think of the quality. The quality starts from the very beginning. When you pick up a mushroom, if you get dirt on the mushroom, your quality's gone. If your stalk's not cut straight, your quality's gone. Believe it or not, if you pick a mushroom up probably a minute after you've already picked it, the mushroom gets greasy on the top. So picking up the same mushroom twice creates problem. So if your cutting angle is not correct, when you cut it off, you're pressurizing the bottom of the mushrooms. If you push it down and there's dirt on the bed, that's where we have our punnets coming in from, or our mushrooms coming into the cups from the side. The placement of the mushroom, if you've too much vacuum, you will damage the mushroom. It doesn't make any difference. You put your suckers whatever way you want to put them. At the end of the day, the damage on the mushroom is in the circle where the air is. It's also sucking the weight of the mushroom, because it is porous, it's sucking it up through it. So if you have too much vacuum, it will lift it off. We don't have that problem. The placement of the mushroom also depends on the length of the stalk. So for smaller mushrooms, we want to go further into the punnet. On larger mushrooms, we want to stay further up. If you've cut your stalk long, the next time you need to be going down into the punnet a little bit higher. So if your stalk's cut at 7 millimeters, or your stalk's cut at 4 millimeters, because you definitely don't want to be pushing one on top of the other. We have found in our scenario that by lifting several mushrooms at a time, they sit in the punnet an awful lot better. So the quantity of the times that you pick a mushroom or touch the mushroom vastly increase the damage to the mushroom. There's no doubt about that. So it's all of those things, getting it into the freezer as quickly as possible. In the next 5 to 6 months, we will have autonomous vehicles going towards our machines. So the person on our machine will press a button, the autonomous vehicle will come beside with the empties, and they'll swap them out, take the empties off, put the foods away. Because a lot of mushrooms are sitting far too long at the end of the shed, which no matter what anyone says is, you're losing your weight, but you're also reducing the quality and the shelf life of your products. So quality and presentation, it's all the same thing, and you need to solve them all. Solving one or two things doesn't really make any difference. At the end of the day, as I said at the very beginning, if the mushrooms look bad, not only have you lost a sale, you'll probably lose a customer.
Okay. Paul has a question first.
The Irish mushroom industry is different to the Dutch industry or the American industry, etc. To provide a solution for our industry, you kind of need to understand our needs. So what do you see is different about the Irish mushroom industry compared to, we said, Dutch industry or the American industry?
Do you want to start off, Stefan?
Sure. We just talked about quality quite a bit. Quality is very important here. Integrating within existing infrastructure is also very important. There's challenges there for sure. There's many variations across the farms that I've visited thus far. Even within the same farm, within rooms, there's variations. Spacing outside of the room, spacing around your beds, where air handling is dealt with. So being flexible to integrate your system into a variety of different infrastructures is definitely a must. So that flexibility of your system has to be there. Cost effectiveness as well. The system needs to be cost effective. If your system is not paying back within 2 years, it's not going to go far. And it also needs to survive. You need to survive. The systems need to survive at least 3 times that in order for the customer to get a good payback. And leverage that discounted harvesting labor for a longer amount of time. So I would say flexibility of integration, cost effectiveness, and quality are the most important.
Same for you, Rick?
Yeah, I generally agree with Stefan. It is necessary that it's easy to integrate in the existing facilities, and that it's easy for any redundancy, that you can use your equipment, and we also reduce the investment, that you can use it from room to room.
I think before I answer that question, I think the one thing that's super cool about this event compared to 2 years ago is 2 years ago felt very theoretical. We were all kind of just starting up and trying these different things. Now you can just go to the farms and see our solutions. All of us have products that are live and you can go and walk and say, yeah, that works, or no, that doesn't work, and talk to the farmer and say, you know, is the suction cup ruining quality or is it not? And you can actually have those conversations and see are anyone pushing back there. I think with Ireland specifically, each country is totally different, so I love that question. You know, in the Netherlands, I love that we can just like light pin set, graze, harvest, tons of stagger, and pick 60 millimeter mushrooms and don't even worry about baby buttons. You can't do that here in Ireland. Then we go back to North America and you got this super heavy pin set and everything is kind of concentrated in that 35 to 50 millimeter range. So you have to get a ton of mushrooms in that medium size. Look, it all starts with the consumer. I love this morning at my hotel that there was mushrooms at breakfast. They're nice little baby button mushrooms. Don't see that in North America, but that then changes. What are we growing and harvesting here in Ireland to be able to optimize for the market? You know, much heavier percentage of baby button mushrooms for sure. And then I think, you know, quality standards for us, we're doing millions of mushrooms in Ireland, the Netherlands, and Australia. They're all super high there. In North America, I'd say it's lower. You know, they still have decent quality standards, but you know, Canadian farms would be higher than the US farms. Even the Canadian farms that are selling into the US would have a different perspective on quality than those who are selling domestically. And so I think for us, a lot of it starts with what's selling at the grocery store, which you know ends up changing it, and then you know what can we do from a giveaway perspective? Does it need to be perfect on a punnet basis or on a blended punnet basis to meet e-way legislation? All these little things have to then be factored into how the robots are thinking about which mushroom to pick, when to pick it, and then what the ultimate end state is for yield and quality.
Alan?
In Ireland, there's a great variation of infrastructure, phenomenal. Even inside the shed, you've got different rails at different heights, in different places, the bottom rails. You just have to adapt to it. That's the way it is. Entrances, slopey things like that there. I think but the great advantage that Ireland has is its quality and its adaptability. It really is, they duck and dive a lot more, and they have a reputation for presenting their products the way they should be presented. I think they're world leaders with regard to that. The thing is that I believe in Ireland you definitely do not want to lose is the look of the mushrooms in the punnet. It's everything. You could teach the world how to do it, and it drives me nuts. I see people in different parts of the world, and I just think if Ronnie Wilson seen them, he'd tell you to get that pallet away down the road and dump it. Do you understand me? When some of the quality that I've seen in Ireland, and I think you should be very, very proud of it. In fact, and for instance, I was in one place and the person said we do two-handed picking, and I goes, yes, that's great. This will be easy. Put the machine in, and they're picking one mushroom in each hand. It's two. I goes, in Ireland we have 3 mushrooms in this hand. Before we start on, hey, two-handed picking, you've got nothing extra. You're 1 mushroom down. So I would say the big thing is you need help now. That's what we've tried to offer, and you've got the quality, you've got the presentation. But I think if you lose the presentation, that's where the problem will stem. That's where your sales will go. At the end of the day, salesmen and things like that there always get the rough end of the deal, but sales is everything, and I think yous are doing it nearly all right.
Amen.
Well, the Irish compared to the Dutch, I would say in the past I would always thought that the Dutch was already at the upper level. Compared now the Irish and in UK quality standards, it's definitely the minimum or even higher. From size of mushrooms, I would say it's slightly smaller. I think in the Dutch market we have more 40 millimeters, 45 millimeters. Here in the Irish market, I see more smaller mushrooms, 20 millimeters, 25 millimeters. That's which are all able to be handled by the machines, of course.
Okay. Emil, you've got a question?
Yeah, so we're of course talking about automation for a few hours now. I would maybe like to put Christians in the room as well, like virtually with the drawer system, because it's not been talked about a lot today. And I would like to ask the question maybe to all five of you. If you could build a farm right now, would you build it with tilting shelves and bluebells? Would you build it with normal Dutch shelving and bluebells? Or would you build a drawer system? You know, like I think those are, at least from my point of perspective, three ways of going into automation with a new building. And I would love to hear which of those three you guys would build.
Okay. Interesting question. Alan, do you want to maybe kick off?
I would build a standard farm the way it is at this particular moment in time. I don't think that tilting shells, I think it's going to be a pain down the end. Realistically, the people standing at it, I don't know about you, but I don't think something like this here is really, really comfortable. I've tried it. We like sitting at 45 degrees where this hand is going into the middle of the bed and this hand is fairly close to the machine. But so I believe in solving problems where the problems arise rather than delegating the problem away down the road to somebody else that's not actually responsible for it and everyone believes something else. So I would go to a straightforward farm. I would have a bit more room at the front, and I would obviously like a corridor when you're going in and out of the inclement weather where your glasses keep steaming up all the time as you move from one place to another. But with regard to the tray system on the Christians, a lot of people would come to me and say, well, it's made of steel, it hasn't been fully tested with regard to longevity. What's going to happen when the bottom starts rusting? I haven't got the answers for that, but that's what the people have come to me about. Tilting shells, hey, I don't think that mushroom growers have to look for the problems. I think the problems come looking for them nearly every morning. The thing about it is, do you really want to have it? Things won't tilt. If you put the belt system in, you're moving people an awful lot further away from the bed, which means you have to reach in an awful lot further. Our system allows you to get really close to the bed, and when we've found with people when they're grazing the crop, we have a bar in low down which they can adjust, which means that they can lean against that bar rather than leaning against the shelves whenever they go in. And the other thing is that when our lift system, we've actually got it that you can I've seen it quite a few places where people have picked both sides of the shelves. So they go down one side and then they come back up the other side. So sometimes change is not always good. So I would stick to standard shells, aluminium shells, and the guy that's going to measure the rails and things like that there, they should get him a tape measure or breathalyze him before he actually goes to put up the rails.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to Stefan.
That's a complicated question. I think it highly depends on the market and the industry you're in and the pros and cons of your market. I think right now for Ireland, I think the biggest question on everyone's mind is how can I make more with what I have? Once I can make more with what I have, then I can expand. And when I can expand, then I can ask the question as to what I'm going to build next. Finding solutions for farms that are already built in Ireland is definitely the key question, and that should be the focus. If and when the market gets better, and when new farms can be built, greenfield, then it depends on your desires, of course. If you like the traditional way, then go the traditional way. That's going to give you access to automation. No matter which system you go with, you're going to get access to some automation. The question is what percentage of automation you're going to end up with. I think that we could get similar percentages of automation in both the drawer farms and the traditional farms. About 75-80% automated, 20 to 25 not automated. There's going to be pros and cons with both systems, but ultimately the results are probably going to be similar. They're going to converge to something similar. Right now, we can offer picking, packing, pointing, data collection on a drawer system. On our traditional farm right now, we could offer packing with the help of blue belt systems or conveyance systems from other industry integrators. We can't offer anything for a tilting bed. We didn't decide to go down that path. And then there's also other types of infrastructures too, single layer beds, moving trays as well, single layer moving trays. There's other approaches to take. So I think right now the best is to focus on optimizing what we have, and then in the future revisit that question and see how the industry develops in the meantime.
Okay, Jan man, I think I know your answer.
Emil Brouwer system, of course. Each time. No, yeah, it's another focus, it's another priority of what we have. The only thing I want to add on the panel is about the picker performance, the picker ergonomics. The way we have developed the tilting shells is that you have the compost where the mushrooms are growing on, then you have the blue belt directly next to it, and then you already have the picker. So if you compare that to a traditional shelf or any other shelf, it's the outer beam that holds the shelving, that holds the compost, is placed to the middle of the shelves. So by doing this, we were able to have the picker always reaching very close and even closer than in a traditional shelf, a 1.2 meter shelf with just that's just flat. So so that's how that's our vision about it. That's the only thing I want to add from the panel.
Rick?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It depends on the requirements that our clients give to us. Is a requirement, that's the final idea, is to go for the perfect ergonomics, for the perfect and the highest possible picking rate by hand. Then the tiltable shelves are a very good or the best solution. It is a requirement, or when they give us a requirement to reduce the investment, we would say build traditional farms. They are ready for every system. That they can install trolleys with belts, or that they also can install the newest method about the foil system. It is necessary that you prepare your facility for the future. Also with a big working corridor with a lot of space that you can install also solution for logistics and everything. And I think it is necessary to make choices that everything is possible for the future.
Yeah, look, we're a retrofit solution. We think that the farms work well today. We just want to replace the labor so that the robots would pick 100% of the mushrooms in the room. Depending on how you amortize the cost of the robots, save you kind of 20 to 40 cents per kilo over the life of the robots, or over 4 to 5 year period. That's what we think is the right piece. But I'll bite on your question. I don't know much about building farms, so don't ever trust us to build a farm. But if someone was building a farm optimized for robots, look, I'm a big believer that robots should go to the mushrooms, not mushrooms to robots. I love the concept of bringing something to a robot in a world where it's always consistent, but mushrooms grow in a very chaotic way. It's unpredictable in terms of where mushrooms are going to arrive, where you're going to have heavy pins set up, what's going to arrive early, what's going to arrive late. And so I like the idea of robots moving to the mushrooms. I think it would be cool if in the future people start building farms specifically for our robots. Again, we wouldn't be the ones building it, but to build a design where if you saw our rails are on the ground today, that's a bit of a nuisance when it comes to just how you move them around. You got to move them out of the room onto a mobility cart, on that cart, wash them down, then into another room. I'd love it if everything was in the ceiling, so the robots saw the whole farm as one consecutive bed that they can go in and out the doors. There'd be automated cleaning stations, and that to me seems super exciting. But again, we're built as a retrofit solution, so guys like me should keep our mouth shut when we talk about new farms.
Okay, Les?
This is directed at Sean, I suppose, more than anyone else. So, Sean, on your left, there's 4 guys there, and they've all developed blue belts and removal of the blue belt quite successfully, and a lot of farms are going that route. I would suggest, and I know you're trying to be the holy grail of autonomous picking, and that's great if and when it works completely. But in the intern, would you see a market for picking onto a blue belt? And just, I'll expand on that a bit. It's all great talking about a big expense, but by going autonomous, you've ruled out probably 95% of people that grow mushrooms around the world. hugely expensive addition to any farm, and I would think it's more affordable for farms to start on day one with a blue belt, removed by hand, move on to one of your guys on the left to be able to automatically remove off the belt into trays, and then have a system designed that's more simplistic to what you've got on offer, in addition to what you have on offer, for smaller operators that can afford the harvesting system that you have, but instead of doing everything, it's going into the blue belt, and it gives everybody a chance to have 3 bites at it, as opposed to going all the way with just the one.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that we discussed that amongst our board as well. I think that we're a company that, from an outsider's perspective, I could see the view of like, holy shit, these guys have raised $75 million from investors, so they're just trying to do everything to defend that view, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The challenge that I see for that, what Stefan showed was super impressive on the robots picking the blue belts. Like the challenge that we see in that space, and we are always contemplating where we should fit within the world, is placing, when you grab the mushroom, then putting it into something that is not actively trying to support the collection of that mushroom, and doing it across 100% of all the mushrooms in the room is very difficult. And we're at a stage of the company now where we're no longer trying to test this on one farm, we're trying to scale the business across a bunch of farms. So as we think through, once you grab the mushroom, how you transfer it, if it's a robot transferring into a dumb system, so like a piece of rubber, that creates a lot of complications today. Even today, we're dropping anywhere from 7 to 3% of mushrooms at the handoff into another smart computer vision guided system that is using fingers to grab the mushroom as it's transferred there. And so we're making a lot of improvements there, but as I think back to now, how do I make sure I never drop the mushroom into something else that can't help that mushroom be accepted into it? That big trade-off is a challenge. Like the fundamental space that we're in is we're trying to replace 100% of the human brain in the process. That does a lot of different things when it's picking, trimming, and packing, and then ultimately placing the mushroom where it needs to go. And I just think that whatever is touching the mushroom needs to have some intelligence into it, into how it's navigating it through that path. And so I think, yes, we will look at solutions in terms of how they transport out of there. If we were to pick into a blue belt, we're doing some work right now on our wrist in terms of getting more flexibility if we needed to there. But our view is that we're pretty darn close in solving this right now in terms of a 100% automated solution that goes into the punnet right there, logs all of the data around that mushroom at that point in time and optimizes. But it takes away that path that you're talking about of how do I invest today to reduce some of my costs so that a year or 2 or 3 years from now, then I can go get the robots and add it into the solution I've already created. So I think we've made it trickier for farms and how they make those decisions because we're not building towards that solution for tomorrow. But our view is that we don't need a lot of customers, if I'm being totally honest. Like this industry is already very consolidated. I think it's going to get a heck of a lot more consolidated in the years to come with automation, and that we need to do a really good job of building robots for the customers that are using ours today, and then we can scale aggressively with them over time as they continue to win on labor costs and automation costs.
Okay, Leah?
Hi everyone, thank you for your presentation. So my name is Leah and I'm a research officer here in horticulture, and I'll be making a presentation on sustainability. So my question is, what sustainability credentials could you present to a grower who might be considering adopting your system? And the reason is that they also have to generate a competitive advantage for their product using automation. Right now, a lot of the credentials lean into the fact that the mushrooms are hand-picked, and that's placed in a lot of labeling. But obviously, as that transitions towards becoming automated and all of that, they would have to demonstrate other areas that they might add competitive advantage. So what are these environmental credentials or sustainability credentials that growers might be able to leverage?
Stefan?
The industry is heavily optimized around growing mushrooms in a certain way to allow their labor force to harvest the mushrooms and then transport them around that. The harvesting part is essentially the pinnacle point where all the growing, composting, infrastructure, climate essentially meets your labor and your peak of your labor, and then harvest the mushroom, and then from there you go on to the logistics side of the puzzle. With automation, a great benefit of automation, aside from the labor reduction piece of sustainability, is that you get an enormous amount of data, and using that data, it helps convert the approaches to be more scientific and more consistent, which allows farmers to leverage the data to improve their process rather than being focused on managing their labor. They can be focused on improving yield and extracting more out of their existing crop, which means less resources for more. And some of the materials that are used for growing mushrooms, they're hard to obtain, and to get more out of that is essentially a great way to improve your sustainability and essentially reduce your resources per kilogram produced. You also have the benefit of using that data as a feedback mechanism straight to the composters, straight to the spawn producers, straight to the climate producers, and allow them to improve their own processes, which also allows them to extract more from their product. So the use of data, the use of robotics gives you one piece of it, but the byproduct of robotics gives you the data. And using the data, I believe that we can extract so much more from this crop and this industry in general, where within 10 years, let's say 5 to 10 years, we might see a 30% increase in yield and quality and other sustainability metrics as well in this industry. And I think that is something really exciting to look forward to.
Yeah, do you want to take that?
Well, to refer back to one of the first slides of this presentation, one of the biggest concerns was just keep going with your farm and make sure that you don't have to stop the mushrooms from growing because there's a malfunction with the machine. And I think that's a very important one. If a lot of people are afraid of automation because they are just afraid that the machine wouldn't start. But I think we were able to make a machine that simple, to design it that simple, that you always have a backup plan. If you think about if the shells wouldn't tilt, you can still pick them. If the platform wouldn't go up and down, you can still pick the mushrooms. If the blue belt wouldn't run, you can still pick them and put them in the crates. You can always use something else if one of the parts of the machine doesn't work. If the sorting unit, for example, doesn't work anymore, you can just stand behind the sorting unit and let the blue belt run. For the people who visited the farm, always mention the same thing. It looks all so simple. And I think that was our biggest, or also one of our biggest focuses last year, that it has to be simple. So I would say that that's my thoughts on this panel.
Thinking of practical things, our machine obviously runs on batteries, so you're charging your batteries overnight, whatever, so they're environmentally friendly, I suppose you can say that there. But in around the farms, there's an awful lot of very simple things that actually could be done. And we've actually got a kind of involved in this, especially when we're doing our autonomous vehicles. Closing the doors. So we've actually designed an automatic door that you can set a Kelvin outside and it'll open and close the doors when people come in, so you're not using your fans and half of your coolant going out through the door. Other things like automatically closing the doors on the fridges. There's a lot of things that are very, very practical that would reduce your footprint at this particular moment in time without massive amounts of expense and things like that there. Obviously, the main idea of us getting autonomous vehicles is to get the mushrooms, when you cut the mushrooms, as far as I'm aware from the experts, there's a zymic reaction in mushrooms, and the temperature of the mushroom starts to go up as soon as you cut it. So if you can get your mushrooms from the shed directly to the cooling room as quickly as possible, that there brings down your chilling costs. You know, all of those things, you could start a lot of those things tomorrow or the next day. You understand? And it's not all about robotics, it's just doing the practical things. I think how we measured our machine gathers the data, all that kind of stuff. A very good point was made. At the end of the day, you spend a lot of time filling your sheds, growing your mushrooms, harvesting your mushrooms. For instance, we done in one farm, we had 2 girls on one side with 1 girl on our machine on the other side, 4 shelves high. We started at the same time in the morning. I brought them both empties, or the 2 girls at this side, I brought them the empties, and I took away the fulls for my girl on the machine, who done exactly the same thing. The first half of the day, bang on, tray for tray, two girls were doing, my girl was doing the same amount as the other 2 girls. The big thing that changed in the second part of the day, towards the end of the day, I realised, because we're putting them on separate pallets, we had 20% more mushrooms. 20% more mushrooms on the second part of the day, which is a 10% yield overall. I was sitting there, what the blazes is happening here? But the fact about it is, when we finished at the end of the day, we had mushroom, our bit of compost, there was still mushrooms left, and it was all black on the other side, because people grazed the mushroom. They were taking the same amount off the other, whereas the other ones were doing the scorched earth principle. From a economic, from a climate, all that kind, people have spent a phenomenal amount of effort to get a crop, and I think they're not taking the best. For instance, in America, on a third flush, I couldn't believe it. By grazing the crop back and forward, I went to the guy and the grower, and I says, how much extra have you got? I want you to think about it. I wrote down 40% extra boxes compared to the other people, and he wrote down 50%. So it's unbelievable that grazing the crop correctly, how much extra mushrooms you can get. And if you do it correctly, you don't get into the seconds, because you're skimming across, taking off the bigger ones that are more likely to go into second grades. Okay. So I don't know if that answers your fully question, but at the end of the day, you've got an economic benefit as well as a environmental benefit, especially as I believe that the peak of the yields are probably at the minute, as they start bringing the peak back, you're going to bless.
Okay, Sean, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll keep it super short. I think the work you're doing is super important. Like, what we have right now is one of the most environmental crops in the world, and then now is this huge opportunity as we move towards automation to make it even more environmentally friendly. So I love that, you're here and you're focused on this, because I think it's going to be a story that we need to tell as an industry. Put aside any of our solutions. First one, the guys already hit on this. First one is automation brings in 24-hour or graze harvesting solutions, a crop that grows at 4% intuitively as we pick a mushroom at exactly the right time. When we go away from shift work into continuous harvesting, we're going to get better yields. And then, as Stefan mentioned, the data we're collecting now is going to be able to completely change the entire harvesting and growing process in the future. It's good. Also the sales side, where if you can see what can I sell days before you need to sell it with a crop that expires faster than anything else in the produce aisle, that's going to become a huge story around sustainability too. So I don't think that we necessarily know. It depends on which companies end up winning in the automation space. But I think it's going to be a fascinating story to tell. I think it's important for this industry for us to be able to tell that story as we start seeing the changes that come through automation from the perspective of a more sustainable harvesting process.
Okay. Just final question from Mark.
Hi guys, Mark Walsh. I think most of you guys know me, Walsh Mushrooms and Irish Farmers Association Mushrooms and Hort Chair. Just reading an article here from only middle February 2026. Elon Musk reveals why robot hands are the ultimate engineering nightmare holding back the AI robot revolution. Okay, he obviously is a multi-billionaire and generally doesn't go after things that are worth a few billions. You guys have millions to put into R&D to try and get that hand to, the robotic hand to pick the mushrooms. Is there an argument that it's more like a company like Musk or one of the big Chinese robot companies, and I don't know the landscape out there, but if I were in your shoes, I might be thinking about begging my way in the door of Musk's operation over there, or the Chinese guys over there that have billions to develop the robotic hand, and trying to get an agency, for lack of a better word, or a franchise or whatever, some collaboration, so that you then have that robot hand for the mushroom industry. Have you guys knocked on doors and thought about, instead of trying to develop it all yourself internally with your respective millions that you do have, but there are guys out there with billions, and they're the ones more likely to develop the holy grail of the robotic hand that's needed?
Does anyone want to answer that question?
I can touch on it. I think what you're referring to is more of the humanoid revolution. Robotics, generalized robotics that are very akin to humans and can do jobs that humans are designed to do in a generalistic fashion. If you build them cost effectively, they'll be able to essentially automate any job that a human does. The one thing about mushroom harvesting is that mushroom harvesting is not easy for humans as well. This environment is a very difficult environment, let alone robotics in there doing it effectively. There's two kind of trains of thought there. You can kind of continue to do something based off your intent to harvest things robotically with humans, to harvest them with humans, and then the idea of putting robot humans in there to do the same job. Or there's the idea of changing the way things is done based off the tool that you use. And if there's a better designed tool to do the job, then you can design a better overall process to do the job more effectively than a human can, or a robotic human can as well. Specialized tools to do specialized jobs are much more effective at doing the job than a generalized tool at doing a job is. And evolutions tend to, or industries tend to evolve in the direction of specialization because it allows them to extract more benefit out of it, and tools become specialized for a reason. Rather than generalized tools to do more jobs, it's typically more effective for specialized tools to do a singular job, and that's how we can extract more from this industry.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I love humanoids and what they're doing in that space. He's totally right, though, with the hands, so much of the hands happens in the forearm in terms of what you're actually doing, and that creates a lot of complications. I think we're all in a race right now in the robotic space to create single point solutions before the generalized humanoid approach comes into action. We can all debate whether that's 2 years away or 30 years away in terms of when humanoids are doing various different types of tasks. But the thesis behind humanoids is fascinating in the sense that we're going to build these, they're meant for the whole world, so you can use them to actually build themselves in the future, and will operate at such tremendous scale that we'll sell them for $15,000 or $20,000 per humanoid because we're building so many of them. That idea with AGI incorporated into it, or artificial general intelligence incorporated into it, is fascinating and terrifying at the same time. I think for us as an industry, getting back to Stefan's point, is when you just think about solving one problem, the human form is usually pretty dumb. Like, it doesn't work that well, and for most problems, it's that we built an entire world around that human form. So I think if we can solve the one problem we're trying to solve, it's usually not going to be a humanoid form. And then what we have is a race in time, or whether it's the humanoids or other competitors, is if you replace the labor through your solution, how long will it be until a humanoid, or more likely in our scenario, a viable solution built very cheaply out of China, also enters into this space? And at that point, have we demonstrated moving beyond being a labor replacement solution company into a data and revenue optimization solution company? I think that's the big risk or race that we're all trying to get towards after our first solution clearly starts working, and how long we can get to mode number 2.
Okay, final comments from Jan.
Yeah, I will keep it short. I think it doesn't matter really the application, but if you implement a humanoid, they also need maintenance, they also cost some amount of money. I know they are developed quite efficient, but I think if you implement it into an industry, you need to make sure they just work efficient themselves. And I think the way our system was designed to maximize the picker ergonomics, I think it's quite possible to have this in some years replaced by a humanoid, maybe to help the picker to do the easy task of reaching the shelf and put the mushroom on the moving conveyor belt. But having all the other steps, the sorting, the weighting, the logistics, all simply automated, I think it only can help the evolution of the humanoid.
Okay. So I'd like to close this session. So I'd like to thank Sean, Rick, Jan, Stefan, and Alan